You're entering Corsi Nation.
It's Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today it is Monday. It's August 18th, 2025. Thanks for joining us on CorsiNation.com. You can see us on X at Corsi Jerome 1, Jerome Corsi, phd.substack.com. What we're seeing here is, I want to start off with something that Donald Trump posted yesterday on Truth Social. And this is really pretty important in terms of, as you know, in God's5stones.com. Chris will show you on God's 5 Stones in a minute. We've been doing voter integrity. We're also expanding it to go into the Act Blue investigation. I'll cover more on that today in a few minutes. But Trump posted yesterday on Truth Social a long post on mail-in ballots and on the elections, which essentially lines up with what we've been saying Trump is going to do, ordering a new executive order. He's telegraphing here. There will be an executive order signed to bring honesty to the midterm elections. Now, Trump said, I'm going to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots, and also, while they're at it, highly inaccurate, very expensive, and seriously controversial voting machines, which cost 10 times more than accurate and sophisticated watermark paper, which is faster and leaves no doubt at the end of the evening as to who won or lost the election. Okay, now that's a very important statement, because right away he's saying that we're going to eliminate the major cause of fraud that the Democrats have used and architected for decades in order to steal elections. And make no doubt about it, the Democrats are stealing elections. I think as many as, if we get fair elections, I think as many as half the people who are in Congress as Democrats, half in the House and half in the Senate may be gone. I think there's that much cheating. Okay, so what I'm going to read, it's a little bit long, but I'm going to read the entire thing. I'm going to break it up and comment on it. But so we are now the only country in the world that uses mail-in voting. All others gave it up because of the massive voter fraud encountered. We'll begin this effort, which will be strongly opposed by Democrats because they cheat at levels never seen before, by signing an executive order to help bring honesty to the 2026 midterm elections. Okay, now that's an important statement. Trump is saying he's going to sign a new executive order, which we've been predicting. Remember, the states, he continues here, remember the states are merely an agent for the federal government in counting and tabulating the votes. They must do what the federal government, as represented by the President of the United States, tells them for the good of our country to do. With their horrible radical leftist policies like open borders, men playing in women's sports, transgender and woke for everyone, and so much more, Democrats are virtually unelectable without using this completely disproven mail-in scam. Elections can never be honest with mail-in ballots voting, and everybody, in particular the Democrats, know this. I and the Republican Party will fight like hell to bring honesty and integrity back to our elections. The mail-in ballot hoax using voting machines that are complete and total disaster must end. Okay, now that's, again, Trump is extremely strong on this. He's got a lot of capitalization, a lot of exclamation points in this, which, again, are emphasis. Trump continues. He's saying, remember, without fair and honest elections and strong and powerful borders, you don't have even a semblance of a country. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. Okay, now that's something we've been waiting for him to say. And with that tweet, I think it vindicates everything we've done at God's 5 Stones. It shows that we have cracked the code on the cheating that has been done. There are algorithms in the State Board of Election records, and we're going to have to do them all over again. We're going to have to quit using computers which allow for the creation of millions of false records, people who do not exist, yet they get legitimate state IDs and they can vote in mail-in ballot schemes. Okay, this is an extremely important point, and President Trump is now beginning to move on it. And so I think we're seeing a major shift here in policy. Chris, I'd like you to come here and comment on this one, because it's one I've worked on now for about almost 3 years to get to this point. And it'll be a huge victory once we get Donald Trump's new executive order.
It's going to be huge. I'm sure he can pull it off too. He'll have Congress's blessing. I'm pretty sure at this point, at least a slim majority. This is look. This mail-in balloting was abused, especially during the left's COVID rules to help bring in Joe Biden in 2020. This is part of their illegal cheating establishment. There are ways to look. Sunny Hostin was on The View herself, saying she sent in her son's mail-in ballot. That, my friends, is election fraud in and of itself.
Well,
But it was okay.
the Democrats all think it's cute and clever and smart and how they steal elections. Ha ha ha, But it's a crime. And there are federal felonies being committed by the Democrats left and right, and they're going to have to be held accountable for them.
It's a crime except for Clause 83, except for Democrats.
Except for Democrats. Catch-22, except for Democrats. Okay, Democrats can cheat. Okay, but again, because we caught this before the 2024 election, the Democrats, you'll notice, did not do what they did in 2020, where they continued counting after the election night, and then they had produced enough mail-in ballots to swing the election to Biden and said it was legitimate. And they got away with it because the mainstream media supported it and the courts supported them. But I think now that Donald Trump won in 2024, they could not use the algorithms because we would have caught them. So at the end of election night, they reported for Trump. That was key. And with that done, you see a fundamental shift, which is now Donald Trump as president is going to change the election system as commander-in-chief under the premise that foreign nations have penetrated our elections, and Tulsi Gabbard has released that information with regards to China penetrating the computers during the 2020 election to change votes. Chris?
I think about it this way. I'm pretty sure the Democrats could have cheated to win 2024. They just didn't want to. That's another story for another day. But the fact that
they would get caught, they would have gotten caught.
Right. Look, taking down one of their weapons is going to be huge.
Yeah, it's going to be huge.
At this point.
And so I'm looking forward to it. Donald Trump will probably issue that executive order in September to give us enough time, a little more than a year and maybe a couple of months, maybe 14 months, to make sure that the 2026 midterm elections are legitimate with voter IDs, with proof of citizenship. I think these are going to be things that will fundamentally change America and put it back on the right track.
It'll be bad news for the Democrats. Let's put it
bad news for Democrats for sure. Okay, number two, let's go to another story. Today is going to be the continuation of Friday's summit between Putin and Trump in Alaska. I think some fundamental issues got resolved in Alaska. I think number one, Trump and Putin have agreed that there'll be some pullback in the territory by Russia in order to get an agreement. Russia does not want the part of Ukraine on the west that is favorable to the Germans, were Nazi in World War II and are still neo-Nazi today. So some territory can be easily given up. But the two provinces in the east, including Donbass, which now Russia occupies, and Crimea, I think those are going to Russia. I think that Zelensky is going to have to accept that he lost the war, Ukraine lost the war, and these territories, which are Russian-speaking, are now going to come under Russian control. Okay, so that's part of it. I think a territorial agreement is number one. Number two, I think there'll be some form of a European Union guarantee, or short of joining NATO. They're not going to bring Ukraine into NATO. Now, Zelensky over the weekend pulled a stunt. He started inviting the European nations to attend, and Trump went along with it. Now, I think this was a mistake, and that Trump should have recognized that Zelensky is trying to act like he's the president of the United States. He's trying to set up and scuttle the summit that's coming up between Putin, Zelensky, and Trump. Zelensky has got to realize what Trump said to him in the Oval Office. You don't have the cards. Zelensky is lost on the battlefield. There's no way he's going to regain the territory short of a nuclear war, and we're not going to nuclear war over Ukraine. So we're in a situation right now where Zelensky is going to have to be told the facts of life He's going to have to accept them because he's not going to be given a chance to wreck another opportunity for peace. I think essentially, if Zelensky wants to go this route and the Europeans want to support Zelensky and say, we're going to continue fighting with Russia, then Trump ought to say, that's fine, do it, but no more aid, no more military support, and probably even pull out of NATO, because this is it would be now at this point very provocative. If Trump and Putin have reached a fundamental agreement, Zelensky has no right to come in and scuttle it. And I think that's going to be the fundamental thing we're going to see play out in the next few days. Zelensky's probably going to try. He's probably going to try because, again, he doesn't want this grand compromise to settle the war. It will end all the flow of money and will expose his corruption. So Zelensky may suffer very serious repercussions if the war does end. The Europeans are stuck. I want to shift to another ground here on the that's relevant, but people don't take it into consideration, and that is the desperate situation that Europe is in. Okay, if we go to Zero Hedge, there's a very good article on what's happening in Europe in general, but the markets in Germany are already in recession, and it's only going to get worse if we, in fact, have a continuation of this war. So if I can find the article here, okay, there's one article standing in the way of a grand compromise on Ukraine that was an article that was written by Andrew Korbko on his Substack. He's saying that some of the points that have to be agreed to are that Russia's goals are to demilitarize Ukraine and denazify it, to restore the country's constitutional neutrality, to obtain recognition of the on-ground reality, namely that he's taken over these provinces which are Russian-speaking. Putin suggested he become more flexible, more reasonable. For instance, he's willing to make some assurance that he's not going to take over all of Ukraine, or he's not going to invade Western Europe, none of which I don't think he aspires to do either one. But Putin is more flexible and more willing to compromise. I think he's gotten the message that Trump basically wants the conflict to end. Okay, so Putin's probably going to have to curtail the size of his armed forces after the conflict ends. He's going to try to criminalize the glorification of World War II era Ukrainian Nazi collaborators and or rescind the anti-Russian legislation. Have them remove the 2019 constitutional amendment about seeking NATO membership. Amend the Constitution to more easily cede land without having to hold a successful all-Ukrainian referendum on the issue. Okay, so Trump said that he'll basically call up NATO, agreeing not to deploy troops to Ukraine and to curtail the arms exporting to it. Also encouraging this going after anti-corruption in Ukraine, which Trump desperately wants. Okay, so I would think that by the end of this week, we should be in a good position to assess that the war, the terms on which the war is going to come to an end. This war is going to end. Trump is determined to end it, and Zelensky's ready to end it. The only one standing in the way, Putin's ready to end it. The only one standing in the way is Zelensky. And for Zelensky to continue fighting this war, he's going to need money. He's going to need equipment and arms, and Trump is going to make sure he doesn't have them. So there's not going to be much alternative here except for Zelensky to accept the deal. I think that's the way that Trump has got to play it. And if he does play it that way, I think we have a very good chance of seeing the war successfully conclude. And that's certainly been my goal. And certainly, I think the goal of anybody who's rational here is to see this war wind down. It has too much potential to go into a nuclear war unless some rationality is brought to the table. And I think Trump is determined to have these discussions be on rational grounds, not on emotional grounds. Okay, so fundamentally, today is going to be an historic day as we look towards what steps are going to be taken to effectuate a final peace solution here in Europe. Now, other issues with regards to Europe is that we're seeing in Germany in particular already in a recession, and Germany is going to intensify that recession by its policies, which are to have a continued bloated bureaucracy. This European Union bureaucracy is way out of line, as is ours. Secondly, the Green New Deal. Now, enough propagandizing has gone on that these populations believe in the Green New Deal in Europe, and they continue to like the idea of net zero energy. But net zero energy is essentially going to cause these economies to collapse. You know, the Keynesian economy had predominated since the 1960s. And I can remember when I was in college and in graduate school, John Maynard Keynes was all the rogue. It was all everyone was learning Keynesian economics. Well, what Keynes said basically was the recessions were because there was not enough consumer demand. So therefore, the state's job was artificially create this demand, lower interest rates, printing credit, stimulating the economy with deficit spending. That was all Keynesian. But what it did in Europe and the United States was it created a mountain of state debt. We did not have these huge debts until after the 1960 Keynesianism, a huge bureaucracy, distorted financial markets, and declining productivity. Okay, now these are economic facts. And this Green New Deal, which created a pseudo economy, which was disguised as a green transformation, and it was sold to the public as a contribution to saving the planet. In fact, it was a monstrous corruption, a grotesque response to Europe's strategic energy dependency, which devours ever larger portions of the economy each year just to keep its oversized subsidy machine running. Okay, this is from an article, a very good article by Thomas Colby. And I think he's exactly right in that what we're seeing in Europe, in fact, Germany alone poured between 90 and 100 billion euro in 2024 alone into this green energy boondoggle. So the federal government provided 58 billion euro, while the European Investment Bank added 8.6 billion in fresh loans. So the EU's investment program, 69.1 billion, and the EU's innovation and environment funds, another 20 billion. All of this flow of financing, it created a zombie economy because all these Green New Deals failed. As they failed, the money was lost and no one was charged with bankruptcy. So Germany's now in its third year of recession, and it's seeing a collapsing economy with increasing number of corporate bankruptcies. The government has added 500,000 public sector jobs in the last 6 years, while 1.2 million private sector jobs disappeared. All this, I think, predicts a European crash of major proportions. I've been predicting this for quite a long time, and it has economic consequences for each one of us. If Europe collapses, we have a European general collapse, what you're going to find is that the economic markets around the world are going to collapse. And that's going to be a crisis. Donald Trump has seen it, and he's tried to prevent it with this bill, which does increase spending for the time being. But the next thing after Donald Trump gets the war settled, he's going to have to deal with economic reality. And the economic reality he's going to have to deal with is that, in fact, the world is floating in debt. And our national deficit is now, the national debt is now $38 trillion, way out of line and not sustainable. So therefore, Chris, if we'll show the book that people can get, which is this, I wrote a book, How the Coming Global Crash Will Create an Historic Gold Rush, and it's happening. Price of gold today is still very high. It's still over $3,300 an ounce. Okay, so if we take a look at, I'm just gonna make sure I got the most current price. It's gold is right now $3,361, silver at $38.48. If you take a look at Swiss America, you can see that we have here a lot of offerings which allow you, by the way, you can get the free book by calling Swiss America 1-800-519-6268. 1-800-519-6268. Write it down, 1-800-519-6268. And if you like the show, if you want to support us, do call Swiss America. For those who are establish a relation as a new customer of Swiss America, you can get this Walking Liberty $50 offer, which is up to 250 of these coins, Walking Liberty $50, which are very high in silver content, 99.9% silver. And Swiss America is offering it as a loss leader. Basically, the cost or the value of the coins in silver is about what you'll pay for them if you become a customer of Swiss America. And then I think you should realize that maybe buying gold is too expensive, at $3,300 an ounce. So of course, if you listen to us, we were asking you to make these decisions when gold was about $1,800 an ounce. Okay, so this Walking Liberty $50 gets you into silver, which is a lot less expensive than gold, and yet you can have some of your holdings in a currency and an actual coin that will increase in value where your dollar's purchasing power is diminishing. Okay, so I want to cover a few more stories here today. Chris, there's this whole issue of the police, in DC now being under Trump's control, as Trump has really militarized DC. And so the left is saying, oh, he's really trying to repress blacks and this is unconstitutional. And but yet they're bringing in protesters in buses, which I think we have some video of, right, Chris? I think Chris will cue it up here in a minute.
Some video here, just pulling it up from behind the scenes here. So yeah, so I'm going to pull this over here. Just caught me off guard. I wanted to grab this up. What happened was I had to reload the video. That's what happens here when you're behind the scenes and trying to reload things. Anyway, here you go. This is what you're going to find here are these protesters, and see these little two buses. Those are a couple of many. But you'll find videos on X and social media where these protesters are chanting, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't as riotous as a lot of other ones, but they did bring in people from outside DC for a DC protest. You can tell by these buses. Bucks was going into this too, allegedly.
And there's just really not any. These are kind of rent-a protests. These are protests that are, I mean, you're really not getting real protesters here when they're being bussed in. But again, the whole point here is that the left has had a plan that they were going to disrupt everything Trump is doing by having another set of 2020 riots across the country, Black Lives Matter and Antifa, etc. And the reality of that is that Trump has now got provisions where he's ready to put the troops on the ground if he has to, call out the National Guard, but it is not going to be a repeat of 2020. You're not going to have the cities burning and Trump not being able to do anything about it because people like General Kelly, who was his chief of staff for a while, or General Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said that they would not support the use of the Insurrection Act for Trump to use the military to gain control of cities and rioting. Well, that's not going to happen again. Trump is ready to go into the cities, and DC is just the first indication of Trump saying, look, you want to play this game with rioting and all the rest and destroying our cities with crime? We're going to be countering it by being willing to put in the military and being willing to take over these cities in order to prevent that from happening. So again, I think we've got a very, very different Donald Trump in the White House than we did the first term. Much more sophisticated understanding how the left plays. And I think that we're seeing increasing articles that the agenda of the left is so unpopular that unless the Democrats could cheat, they'll lose every election. Chris, any comments?
Yeah, I wanted to play this for you. There's the CEO of one of these, I guess, crowd formation groups, if you will, called
Rent a crowd,
Crowds on Demand.
rent a
And this
crowd, rent a crowd.
CEO said he was offered $20 million to recruit demonstrators for the big anti-Trump protests on Thursday. Here's what he said to News Nation.
Have the organizers of the July 17th demonstrations approached you?
This is from about a month ago. Not
Interests
this one, but it's still important to note.
aligned with the organizers of the July 17th movement have approached us. And in fact, we rejected an offer that probably is worth around $20 million.
$20 million?
Correct. I mean, this is a nationwide thing, right? It's not to say I would have made $20 million personally, but the value of the contract would have been worth around that amount nationwide to organize huge demonstrations around the country. But personally, I just don't think it's effective.
So that's something else. It's to the point where people see through all this nowadays. Yes, I know these people enjoy themselves. They have their parties. Yeah, the numbers here talking about is one guy who scanned 318 mobile devices, small sample, but saying that 92% of them were at last 5 DC protests. It's like something to do for these people. It's pure blind Trump hate. And and a lot of these protests are funded by major billionaires. They have people bust in. It's an embarrassment, and at this point, it's almost like just a laughable entertainment for the rest of us. They're not even real anymore. It's all theater.
Well, there's an article also that is right now a leading article on the Liberty Daily, which is coming from Zero Hedge, about how this the left is putting huge amounts of money into Zohran Mamdani's Islamic Marxist run for mayor, and so Soros and others are pouring huge amounts, millions, into his campaign. Okay, so how the Working Families Party, which is his party, is supposed to be grassroots, but it's not grassroots. In fact, that behind it, there's a $2 billion tax-exempt laundromat that's anything but local, grassroots, or honest. Okay, so here's something posted by Sam Antar on X. It says, easy answer. Zohran Mamdani is the product of a grassroots Washington syndicate of 501c3 and 501c4 entities funded by George Soros and Silicon Valley billionaires. He's their manufactured product. Okay, another post by John Schachtetel. Mamdani is utterly repulsive in every way. He possesses every negative attribute attached to my generation. I simply do not understand why this man-child captures widespread appeal outside of the Democratic Socialist adult Disney crowd. An absolute loser. And yet on Joe Rogan, Mamdani is saying, I don't think we should have billionaires because there is so much money in a moment of such inequality. But he doesn't seem to mind all the money from the billionaires going into his campaign. It's the usual duplicity of the left. And again, I think people are seeing through it. And Donald Trump, this past Sunday did not turn into nationwide protests all across the country. There weren't nationwide riots. The country is not upset at what Donald Trump is doing. Quite the contrary. I think the country welcomes the fact that we're getting some responsible government. Chris, any comment on that? Because I think that's another very important point.
Well, it's funny because they switched from the millionaires and the billionaires. And they just say, well, the billionaires are the ones causing all the problems. When we all know most of these people are multimillionaires, even the ones like Mamdani who claim to be poor. The guy comes from money. The guy lives in a rent-controlled apartment coming from money. So not only are these these millionaires and billionaires supporting him to run for one reason or another, secondly, he's ripping off the very people he claims to represent because he's living cheap while making a decent salary, by the way, as an assembly person, and of course being born having a family filled with money. That the man is just one of those big phonies. I still believe socialism is more of an industry these days. where these people make a lot of money and get a lot of perks off of it. They keep pushing it because money just flows right into their pockets for the same reason. Bernie Sanders is a prime perpetrator of all this. Come on, 3 houses ain't enough?
Right. Well, again, it's a way to get rich if you're a socialist.
Right. See, it's a socialism industry.
Yeah, it's a socialism industry. That's correct. Okay, a couple more stories. Central banks are buying gold in record numbers. 95% of central banks say they're not done accumulating gold. Nearly half plan to buy more. Again, this is according to the World Gold Council's latest central bank survey. And I think, again, what's happening is gold is becoming the world's most important reserve asset. I would not be surprised to see Donald Trump embrace a cryptocurrency solution to take some of the liabilities off the federal government balance sheet. For instance, you could pay Social Security and XRP. I own XRP. It's a method of trading internationally, but also it's only trading at about $3 a unit right now. It could easily go to $1,000 a unit. So I think younger people getting their Social Security benefits would be just as happy to take them ultimately in XRP or have them appreciate in XRP rather than dollars. That would take that liability off the federal government balance sheet, and it would be an economic plus for everyone. Gaza is continuing. Netanyahu is continuing to clear Hamas out of the Gaza, and is now more and more proposing relocation plans for the Palestinians outside of Gaza. He's saying now in South Sudan, Libya has also been willing to take Palestinians. So I think there's a move here right now to implement in the Middle East an expansion of Trump's Abraham Accords. And economic prosperity is going to be the way to the future to achieve world peace. We've been predicting that for some time, and I think it's beginning to happen. Finally, we're doing a new emphasis on Act Blue. I did a large podcast on Sunday, and Chris, you'll have it soon to be able to post and to be able to, we may actually play it on Wednesday, the entire broadcast, because we're now tying in Act Blue to a scandal involving mortgages, which appears to be tied to money that the Democratic Party has harvested out of an open border. An agreement with Honduras that was reached 2014, opening the border to millions of unaccompanied minors. And you see here we're dealing with a redesign of God's Five Stones to have it include Act Blue, as well as to include the other issues of the Obama coup d'etat and stolen elections. So we're going to have much more here. I'm going to be publishing much more in Act Blue. And I want to warn everyone, the Democratic Party has been funding itself by opening the border and having child sex trade and the child organ harvesting be at the center of its fundraising activities through our Act Blue. It's going to be a huge, huge scandal, and it's just beginning to develop. Okay, let's wrap up. Today it is Monday, August 18th, 2025. In the end, God always wins. God's going to win here too. And I think we see here a decided effort by Donald Trump to take hold of the Ukrainian war situation and bring it to an end, just as he's taking steps to allow Netanyahu to effect a solution which will make Israel more secure. If we can eliminate Hamas from Gaza, we can do things to roll back the Hezbollah in Lebanon. We've seriously economically damaged Iran, and I think halted its nuclear weapons program by the attack that Trump brilliantly launched on Iran with the B-2 bombers. Thank you for joining us. I encourage you in the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14 to get on your knees, pray, ask God to forgive us for letting the country get to this point of moral decay, too many divorces by older marriages, women deciding that they are suddenly wanting to have a new experience after 30 or 40 years of marriage or 50 years of marriage. The amount of abortions we've had, which are just incomprehensible since Roe v. Wade and this whole woke agenda, sexually mutilating children. These kind of abominations have got to stop. And I believe that the key Obama nation figure, Barack Hussein Obama, will be under criminal investigation. Whether or not he's ever indicted, we'll find out. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi on CorsiNation.com. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow and every weekday. God bless.